It mainly hurt because I feel like the residents there, they've been through enough as it is, and they just have been put there by their families to be trusted and in the right hands.
She is talking about Silver Creek Assisted Living Center in Haley. KMVT obtained documents from the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare outlining substantiated claims of not protecting their residents and not having enough staff to meet their needs.
I felt kind of bad, and I felt like I should have stayed and do my part in making sure these residents were taken care of.
Putting you first, I sat down with the facility's executive director, who admits the facility was given a provisional license and a ban on admission during the investigation. But they say this came down to them being hit by labor shortages, no differently than countless industries nationwide.
We deal with just what everybody else in the valley and in Idaho and in the nation is dealing with, and that is a staffing crisis.
A crisis that's been heightened by the lack of affordable housing in the Wood River Valley. More recently, they say they've hired some employees who live further away, but that also comes with its challenges.
We're here in the valley. There is really nowhere to live affordably, honestly. So our nearest draw is Shoshone and Twin, which does have more people, but the commute is a killer. And then we have those that do it.
The State Department of Health and Welfare conducted a follow-up visit Tuesday, and records show no issues were found at the facility. Norby says they have worked alongside the state to shore up any deficiencies, and their facility provides an even better level of care now.
I would just very much encourage anybody that has any questions or anything just to please come and check out Silver Creek for themselves.
Reporting from Haley, Candace Hare, KMVT.
A dramatic rescue has been taking place in Gooden County for hours, and as details have started to trickle in, one thing we've realized is that the people inside this vehicle were incredibly lucky. This was a truck that was towing a tractor trailer in behind, and it wound up going over the side of the bridge, and it was only the chain of the vehicle towing that trailer that was allowed it to stay upright and not go over into the gorge here at Malad Gorge State Park. Another piece of lucky news, the right front axle. The tire is gone, but the axle itself was just tucked up on a ledge at the bottom of this bridge, and that as well helped to distribute the weight evenly for this vehicle. Had those two things not taken place, the vehicle probably would have found its way down to the bottom of the gorge. And if that wasn't enough, there was a state trooper going by just as the incident happened, and there also was a Good Samaritan who happened to be a tow truck driver. He saw the incident take place, and both him and the police officer went over to the vehicle and used additional chains to secure it to make sure it was stable. All in all, two very lucky individuals who were rescued out of the car by St. Luke's Rappel team. One individual was taken to the hospital by ambulance on the road, and the other was taken to the hospital by helicopter. But either way, very lucky, all things considered. Traffic in the area has been diverted, though this portion of Interstate 84, again near Malad Gorge State Park, remains closed at this time. Reporting from Gooden County, Candace Hare, KMVT.
We're all seeing the impacts of inflation these days, and that includes local government. In Twin Falls, the city is trying to manage it all while operating on a budget created a year ago, no less.
A year ago, we weren't having these issues, and we hadn't had the hit of inflation. We had COVID. We had some labor issues, but nothing like it is today.
At the end of 2021 in the United States, inflation rose to 7%. That's according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. But municipalities and local governments use the Municipal Cost Index, or MCI. Mayor Pierce says the MCI is currently 11.4%. In simple terms, it means the local government's costs are rising faster than the rate of inflation.
I stopped by the Twin Falls Fire Department, a particularly hard-hit city division. Battalion Chief Eric Schmitz tells me everything from PPE to fire trucks, hoses, and parts are tough to come by right now. They even have 2 trucks out of service, the result of not having enough parts to keep them on the road.
It's kind of stressful, just making sure that we can keep our rigs on the road and functioning properly so that we have enough units in service to provide the coverage we're supposed to cover.
Currently, the department is using reserve trucks to fill the void left by their out-of-service vehicles. But I asked, what happens if wear and tear or continued shortages lead to more trucks being taken out of the rotation?
Fortunately, we have great mutual aid agreements set up with surrounding communities. So in the event that we do have our apparatus go down and we fall short, we can request assistance for an emergency call from one of our partners.
Management and teamwork have been the keys for the city during this time, and the challenges come full circle as they're doing so while short-staffed themselves.
Right now, we're down 25% in our staff, either through COVID or openings. I think everybody needs to understand that it's a whole myriad of things and not just inflation.
Reporting from Twin Falls, Candace Hare, KMBT.
Buenas tardes, ¿cómo se encuentran todos?
On this Tuesday night, Lillian Nui is hosting her radio show, Nuestra Comunidad, or Our Community. The show features conversations about health and wellness topics in Spanish. She volunteers her time, hosting after finishing her workday at the local hospital.
Este es su programa, Nuestra Comunidad.
Hosting a Burley-based radio show wasn't originally part of the plan for Nui, who lived in Murray, Utah before applying for her current job, mistakenly thinking it was based in Salt Lake City.
And I called my husband and I says, do you know where Burley, Idaho is? And he's like, no. And I says, well, I applied for a job there. And he's like, we don't know anybody in Burley or Idaho for that matter.
She and her family soon left the city life behind to move to rural Burley, where she works as a clinic manager at Cassia Regional Hospital. But then came the pandemic and a realization.
At the very beginning, there was a lot of misinformation, especially coming out of other countries. And so you had this huge population that was kind of looking for that information, and there was not a source that was giving it to them in their language.
In an effort to bridge that gap, Nui began answering questions on local radio shows, eventually turning it into a weekly gig. Radio, while it may seem outdated to some, is effective in part because of what Nui says are high illiteracy levels in the community.
They're not out there going to pick up a newspaper. They're not home. They're working 2-3 jobs. So a lot of the time they'll listen to the radio at their dairies and where they're working or in their tractors. And that's how they get their information.
Nuestra Comunidad is a hit at the nonprofit radio station Voz Latina. The station's public relations manager says Nui has a special connection with the community.
And I know for a fact that people listen to her because there's people call her La Señora, you know, from the hospital.
Tonight, Nui gives an update on COVID-19 in the community.
Omicron.
Before having a conversation with an expert about gangs. Less than 15 minutes after her show ends, Nui receives a call from a woman who lost her son due to gang violence, who is looking for grief management resources, reminding her of the impact she has on her community.
I wanted to be able to give back to others, and the same way that I was helped, be able to return those favors. And to me, this is like a whole entire chapter that closes because I'm finally able to do that.
Reporting from Burley, Candace Hare, KMBT.
KMVT's Candace Hare spoke to a husband and wife about their experience at the epicenter of the coronavirus crisis in Twin Falls, the emergency room at St. Luke's Magic Valley.
I was flabbergasted. I was like, well, wait a minute. I don't even have a parking spot. All the handicap spots were full. It looked like a tailgate party.
Brian is quadriplegic, meaning both his arms and legs are paralyzed. He says he waited as long as possible before seeing a doctor for fear of coronavirus and crisis standards of care conditions in Idaho's hospitals.
And it was that way from when I arrived Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night. Packed.
For him, this was a nightmare realized.
In 27 years of being in a wheelchair, I had never seen anything in my life like this. And the doctors are going, we don't know what to do. 3 out of the 4 floors, COVID.
Brian's wife, Janine, says she saw incredibly sick people in the ER, including several individuals who were on oxygen. She says the images of what she saw that night still haunt her.
I'm deaf, so it's more of a visual. And that visual alone is still burned into my head about the amount of people that were in this emergency room.
It took over 10 hours for Brian to be transferred from the ER to a room on the non-COVID wing of the hospital. But the feeling of crisis still permeated the building.
While we were there Sunday alone, there was 4 code blues, 3 deaths within a couple of hours of COVID. They announced it over the wing, calling all doctors and nurses to help.
Brian stayed at the hospital for 3 nights.
What is happening to the doctors and nurses, other patients, it's quite frankly not fair. This could have been prevented. If you don't believe it, go sit in the parking lot. You will see it for yourself.
Candace Hare, KMBT. December 14th, 2019. It's the day the Shepherd's family's world changed forever. Aaliyah, then 8 years old, reached over a candle, setting her sequin shirt on fire. Her older sister Gabby jumped in, taking her into the shower to put out the flames. Still, Aaliyah's body was badly burned.
She was burned with 3rd, 4th, and 5th degree burns on over 25% of her body. The doctors didn't think that she was going to make it.
She spent over 2 months in the hospital and has since had a dozen surgeries. But throughout her journey towards recovery, she's been uplifted by others worldwide who have sent her cards. It's a kindness she has tried to pay forward.
It makes me feel glad to make other kids feel happy.
So she received over 2,000 Christmas cards. With that, she received at least 300 gifts, and she kept maybe 30 of those gifts and gave all the rest to Ronald McDonald House.
Now, Aaliyah is asking for the community's help to make her sister, Gabby, who she calls her hero, feel the warmth they have long given her by sending Gabby Christmas cards this holiday season.
Through the whole process, everyone has been sending me cards instead of like my sister, and she's the main one that helped me.
Because as Mom Tia says, heroes should never be forgotten.
The heroes get overshadowed a lot, even when it comes to like the police officers or the firefighters. They save people every day, but then we have local heroes like my daughter. Without Gabby, Aaliyah would not be here today.
Reporting from Jerome, Candace Hare, KMBT.